A very warm welcome. Glad you could join us. In the next hour, we will be seeking answers to questions raised by the Rwanda-UK Asylum Partnership Agreement for Africa. But what are the questions? An earlier secretive Rwanda-Israel voluntary departure scheme presented a flight to Rwanda as a choice. The UK's deal is compulsory. Australia actually pioneered the concept, and EU governments have in recent years paid countries like Libya, for instance, to stop migrants on their behalf. Denmark is in talks, if agreement has not already been reached, to have similar deals with Rwanda. So this move by the UK is not really new. One question is, why the choice of Africa, and particularly Rwanda? Rwanda is one of the smallest countries in the world. It is the same size as Macedonia, but has 6 times the population. According to the World Bank, despite recent economic gains, more than half of its estimated 13 million people live on less than $2 a day. As it stands, Africa shoulders 85% of the burden of refugees world over. Developed countries just host about 15%. Knowing this, should more pertinent questions be focused around a critical examination of what governance is doing for the West versus what governance is doing for Africa? Are economic considerations being cloaked in worldview for favorable humanitarian image? Or should this deal be seen as a plus for what has been described as African countries' decades-long campaign to be viewed as forward-thinking with sophisticated solutions to complex issues? Today is about questions, lots of it for my guest, Dr. Cristiano De Rossi. He is a lecturer and senior research fellow at the South African Research Chair in International Law, Faculty of Law, University of Johannesburg. He holds a PhD in international relations. His research interest mainly focuses on our subject matter today, on legal protection of displaced and forced displaced persons in Africa, on African human rights law, and more broadly, on the development of public international law in Africa. Dr. De Rossi, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Felicity, for the invitation. It's my pleasure to join you.
The UK and Rwanda intentionally, they have blurred the distinctions between migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees. Let's start with an understanding of the distinctions between these, please.
Yes, Felicity. Well, first of all, if we intend migrants as people who are moving, also asylum seekers and refugees are migrants in broad sense. But of course, migrants are people who are moving mostly voluntarily, and generally it can be for economic reasons, but also for study reasons, for example. Students, foreign students in a given country, they are also migrants. On the contrary, asylum seekers and refugees, they are forced displaced persons. It means person who wouldn't like to move spontaneously, but they are obliged to move because of a danger, an imminent danger, or like Article 1 of the 1951 Convention say, or because of a well-founded fear of persecution. There is a distinction, of course, between asylum seekers and refugees, in the sense that asylum seekers are everyone who apply for a refugee status. So potentially everyone can be an asylum seeker. It's sufficient to move from a country to another, claiming to flee persecution and apply for asylum in their host country. But of course, not all of them will receive refugee status. People who will receive refugee status, asylum seekers who will receive refugee status, they are technically considered as refugees. So this is the broad distinction among the 3 categories, actually.
Yeah, I actually needed to get that clarification from you, because most of the reports you get is saying anybody that enters the UK illegally automatically qualifies to be moved to Rwanda. What does the law say about seeking safety in another country?
Actually, I mean, always basing on the 1951 Convention, of course, everyone, and also basing on the 1969 OIU Convention, because we don't have to forget that Africa has its own refugee convention that in its Article 8 established that it is a complement to the 1951 UN Convention. It means it covers, or it tries to cover, the aspects of the refugee protection that are not covered by the 1951 Convention. But what the 1951 Convention says in its Article 31 is that basically everyone has the right to apply for asylum, even if it enters illegally in a country, but he has the right to apply for asylum. So someone cannot be rejected in a country, in a host country, for the sole reason that he entered illegally. Of course, he has to apply for asylum. He cannot just wandering around for months or years illegally in the country, but he has to enter with a specific purpose to apply for asylum, in fact. So, of course, all the asylum seekers arriving on the shore of the UK, and yesterday, I think, there were more than 1,200 just during the weekend, have the right to apply for asylum, to be given a temporary hospitality, and to have the time to apply for asylum. The fact is that
definitely,
yes,
none of the measures seems to be having much of an effect if you still have people getting and taking the dangerous routes to get to these countries. But let's look at Rwanda briefly in this regard. We know recent figures say there's over 150,000 or about that number of refugees are currently in Rwanda. Why is Rwanda suddenly looking? We also know that Denmark is interested in moving, in having that kind of relationship among other countries. So why is Rwanda looking like, all of a sudden, like a fine maiden, despite the human rights issues there?
Okay, this is an interesting point, because many observers, many external observers, they think that Rwanda, of course, is considered as a bad record in human rights protection and etc. But for example, Rwanda is the same country that in 2019, before the pandemic broke out, it was part of an agreement along with the African Union to host people that were detained in the concentration camp in Libya, because we have to call them like it was. I mean, they were not settlement, but they were concentration camp. So in that case, of course, you can see there was no European country involved, at least apparently, but still the Rwandan government showed compassion for these people who were in prison in the Libyan concentration camp, and through this emergency transit mechanism and a memorandum of understanding with the African Union, could host, at least temporarily, people coming from Libya, actually. Now, of course, it's hugely debated why Rwanda accepted to be involved in this. Agreement. In fact, first of all, we don't have to forget that Rwanda, as many people know, Rwanda was basically a francophone country because it was a colony of Belgium. But not many people know that Rwanda, since 2009, is belonging to the Commonwealth. So by the time, he strengthened a lot its relation with the UK, leaving the former French Francophone organization called La Francophonie. And of course, it's hugely debated why Rwanda is part of this deal. Some observers say that they do just because, because of the past of the Rwanda, of the country, so they suffered from genocide and etc. Of course, it's a country who is more sensitive to, to the plight of refugees. Other observers, in fact, and possibly the other majority, they claim that, in fact, behind this availability that Rwanda is showing, there are possibly political and economic reasons, like, a form of strengthening relation, strengthening partnerships with Europe and notably with the UK. Although Rwanda also had some agreement with the European Union, some economic cooperation with the European Union.
Yeah, there seem to be a lot of, plus to the conversation about Rwanda taking that deal beyond the economic interest. But we're trying to look at this conversation from a broader perspective, and that is how the kind of questions that Africa should be asking with this deal in mind. Now, other African countries have had their names mentioned in similar migration management deals. Uganda, for instance, has had their name come up. Libya, DR Congo, as I mentioned in my introduction.
Yes.
We also know that Africa already bears about 85% of the world refugee burden. Where I'm heading with this is, why the destination Africa?
Well, for me, it would be very easy as a scholar working in Africa and working in Africa for almost 10 years, but working on Africa for almost 20 years. It would be very easy to claim that Africa is still considered as a sort of backyard by a number of countries overseas in broad terms. Of course, as I said, possibly there is an opportunity for both counterparts in this deal. Of course, the UK has its own advantages to externalize the refugee flow, the refugee claim, actually, the refugee process to Rwanda. And in this, of course, there have been, other examples. Denmark is trying for several years to do that, and recently he proposed again to imitate the UK. Israel did a similar thing, sending refugees to undisclosed countries, but it seems that it was the same Rwanda and Uganda. But the sole fact, for example, that also in Niger, that is close to your country, the European Union tried to retain in Niger many people who were they were on the way, to reach Libya from West Africa. In fact, not by chance, Niger is possibly the major hub for smugglers and traffickers of human beings in Africa at the moment. So of course, of course, the interest of many governments in Europe now is not to accept too many foreigners, and of course, every legal mean or apparently legal mean is good, to try to deviate this problem. Actually, try not to be in charge of this problem. Europe is flowing. In Europe, we have a large flow of rightist parties, either at the government or that would like to be at the government. And of course, all of them, they have in their own agenda the fact of, of strengthening of closing the border, of strengthening the border. Personally, I'm Italian, and in Italy we will have political election in a bit more than a month, and the parties who are favoring to be at the next government, they are exactly parties who would like to follow the same path of the UK. I mean, of Denmark. There is this wind of 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 change, if we can say so, against foreigners in many countries in Europe.
A change indeed. And this deal, a lot of persons are suggesting, considering what you've talked about and the fact that Africa already hosts about 85% of the world refugee population, should this be, maybe this particular UK deal be some sort of escalation of the confrontation that is needed with developed countries on the issues of migrant management?
Yes, of course it should be. But many actors outside Africa, they know that the policy of many governments in Africa imply the fact that that flow of migrants and or asylum seekers is one of the collateral effects of the presence of the massive presence of extra African actors in Africa. I don't want to say populist things, but it's sufficient to see who's owning the most part of mines in Africa, who is exploiting the most part of raw materials in Africa. I mean, these are facts. So they know. I mean, who's doing that? They know that one of the collateral effects is that Africans, they don't want to stay in a place where they don't see any future. But they don't communicate that properly to governments. So there is, in this way, there is I would say, a lack of communication that afterwards is reflected on the opinion of the public opinion. In Europe, the most part of the public opinion ignores even how many sovereign countries there are in Africa. And this is just the basic. But of course, they ignore the terms of conflicts that are occurring in Africa. They ignore the reason of these conflicts. They ignore the parties who are involved in these conflicts. They ignore who provide the arms in these conflicts to the parties. So they ignore all of that. So it's normal that they just see the final act of everything, right? So what is the final act? The fact that there are Africans coming to the shores of Europe, but they ignore
so what you're basically saying, what if I understand you correctly, you're saying that a confrontation between developed countries and Africa might not be in the offing anytime soon because of a lack of communication between the people and the governments in Africa. So I'm still trying to get that there is a complete disconnect. Because if they're making arrangements and agreements like what we have in Rwanda, and the people are saying this is not in our best interest, I don't know.
Yes, no, but you are completely right. But also there, what is the best interest for the African countries? These are questions that they don't have one final answer, in the sense that every country, every single government, every single politician can, in every single of the 54 sovereign countries in Africa, can give you a different answer. Of course, is it the best interest of the African population, the same best interest that the government have, for example? I mean, this can be debated. So what really needs African people is exactly what the government, the African government, are aiming for. This is another good question that it doesn't have a definitive answer, madam.
These are indeed plenty of questions to be asked,
yes,
but let's go for a quick glass
yes.
of water. When we get
Sure.
back, I will be asking you, you talked about the disconnect between communication with the people. So I will be asking what kind of conversation African leaders should be having about the migration crisis. Just stay with us. Good to know this conversation still holds interest for you. Thanks for staying with us. I still have Dr. Durosi speaking with us on the kind of questions Africa should be asking, really, with the UK-Rwanda deal on asylum. We know the migration crisis is not peculiar to Africa, but what kind of questions should African leaders be having about addressing illegal migration? Dr. Durosi, the question is for you.
Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, no, sorry. No, I thought it were just within the main concept. I mean, the Africans, first of all, in my opinion, they should wonder why they have so many people leaving the country, either in form of migrants or in form of asylum seekers. As I said, I'm not saying refugees because refugees status is a status that is established in the country of destination. So when they leave their own country, the first displaced person, they are basically potential asylum seekers. Actually, they should wonder the usual question, I would say. Why, for example, there are so many conflicts in Africa? What can be done to end them? What can be done to avoid them? Why there are so many raw materials in Africa, and in spite of that, there is so much spread poverty in Africa? Why there are still there is exploitation of children? Why there is exploitation of women? Why there are why there is so massive presence of non-African actors in Africa at various layers of the society.
Now, what would these questions? I know that you have more questions, but what would these questions drive us towards? What kind of answers would these questions bring to us, and what should we be looking for in the answers?
Yeah, I mean, madam, I think that if the government they had the answer. I don't know if they had the answer, but they don't want to apply them, or if they are still looking for an answer. Of course, in all the convention concerning refugees, there is this very short sentence say that we have to address the root causes of displacement. But this is a very broad sentence because because you can detect the root causes of displacement and forced displacement, but it's not really mentioned how you can address them. So in my sense is that they don't say how to address them because they don't want to address them, or they don't say how to address them because they want to leave sovereign countries to address them in the way that they prefer. Why do this convention, when they say that they need to address the root causes of forced displacement, in fact, they are not more specific on that? You
Okay.
understand that if I want to address something, I mean, it's a very, I mean, to address the reason of something, it can mean anything or nothing. So why they
So
don't
you you
address the
you
root
you you
causes?
you actually are suggesting that the answers are not far away. So
No, they are not far away, madam. I think that anyone who has a bit of knowledge of what happens in Africa and doesn't need to be a real scholar, but is sufficient that he has a good knowledge, he may have he may propose answers. He may propose uh, alternatives. Afterwards, we have to wonder why these answers they are not fully applied by governments. That is something that unfortunately I cannot respond because I'm not a politician. But proposals there are a lot. I mean, also the level of the African Union, at the level of the
yeah.
sub-regional organization
Yeah,
like
we'll
ECOWAS.
definitely come to the part that regional bodies play, particularly the AU. But
Mhm.
before that, just to move the conversation along on the kind of questions we should be asking, what's your view on the caution raised that the uproar over immigration crisis in the West must be balanced with a critical examination of the governance, what governance is doing for the West and what governance is doing for Africa?
Okay, madam. My view is I think it's simple, but I don't think it's simplistic. And my view is very simple. As I said, managing the migration in Europe is not that difficult. The problem is that Europe is having a lot of economic problems that came before the pandemic. But as I said, let me take an example. I don't want to offend any other country, so let me take the example of my own country. As I said, I'm Italian. In Italy, we have, and as you know, there are a lot of migrants, and we have issues with asylum seekers. Italy is a country that has decennial problems. We have regions in Italy where organized criminal organizations are part of the states. We have a level of corruption that are not dissimilar to several African countries. We have problem with nepotism. We have problem with unemployment that derives a lot from corruption as well. So what is the result? Instead of addressing these problems that they really striking Italy for many years, what is I mean, possibly this is very difficult. So, what is easier for us? What is easier for Italy? It's better to find the enemy, to find the target in the migrants, because they are the one who are blamed for everything. My sense is that what if we could solve our problem, internal problem first, there will be enough space and enough money for everyone.
Okay.
And what I'm telling you for Italy, that I know the most because I'm Italian, I think that it can concern a lot of many other European countries.
Okay.
So, but sometimes the easiest solution for a government is the easiest solution is to address what is the easiest target and what is easier to target than a foreigner that maybe doesn't even have papers, that maybe comes from a region where there are war for decades. Of
Okay.
course, this is much easier than address the 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 decennial problems that we have and that they are very rooted in our society.
Okay, I want to jump quickly to the question I have on the AU and what they are doing.
Sure.
A statement from the AU in 2021 in response to Denmark Alien Act rejected the act and described it, their words were xenophobic and completely unacceptable. Has there been any response from the AU or any other regional bloc towards this particular deal that we have between the UK and Rwanda now? Because I can't seem to find any.
No, in fact, you are correct, Felicity. Up to now, we don't have any of them. And of course, this, if you want to know the reason, also in this case, the reason can be possibly multiple. One of the reasons can be that, as I said, at the level of, in the African panorama and the AU panorama, Rwanda is seen as a sort of economic model. Is a peaceful country, a substantially peaceful country that, of course, has problematic record of human rights, but internally, but not externally. Rwandan troops have been deployed in several African crises.
Yeah, but that's what the UK government is pushing forward as the reason for what they're doing. But there is no clause in the law that says Rwanda cannot move people that they, asylum seekers that they bring there to other places. And we know that that country has land issues. If you bring people there, they want things to expand, they want to grow and all of that. So how feasible really is the choice of Rwanda? But let's move away from that for a bit because of time interest. I'd like you to talk about the implication of the silence of bodies like AU to this deal.
I understand you, Felicity. The issue is that, you know, everything that you are stating is correct, but is based on suppositions. I mean, do you... are there already some asylum seekers that have been sent from the UK to Rwanda? Not yet. So to say that you are completely correct, we need that the first stock of asylum seekers can be sent to Rwanda and see how they will be there. I mean, how they will live there. Because as I said, of course, you know, as I said, there are past records.
Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you. Are you saying that the AU, agitation for a response from the AU is not too early or too late? That there is still time because they haven't actually, the UK hasn't actually implemented the act of moving asylum seekers to Rwanda?
Yes, Felicity. Let's say that there is, you know, possibly if it was another country, the AU would have been possibly more severe. But in the case of Rwanda, I don't know if they close a bit of an eye or if they want to be more patient. But as I said, everything, all the fears that have been manifested until now, if asylum seekers arrive from the UK to Rwanda, they can be correct, but they're all based on the past. So, I mean, no one can tell us, no one can tell me, no one can tell you at the moment that what happened in the past will happen even in future in Rwanda. And moreover, I would like to ask you a question. Do you really think that after all these controversies, international controversies, the refugees, the asylum seekers sent to Rwanda will be, for example, mistreated, knowing that the Rwanda government will have the eyes of the entire world on it?
The court cases are stalling, but they have, immediately that plane was stopped, you know that the UK said they are going to continue to make efforts to make sure people go. That is just a delay. There seems to be a decision has been made, they're decisive. So there is every possibility that this could happen, despite the efforts of civil organizations at the moment. That would be my response. But quickly, let's look at one of the suppositions that has been put forward that, let me see if I have it here, that Rwanda accepted the deal not only to improve the humanitarian image, but that they should be viewed in the general context of African countries' campaign to be viewed as forward-thinking with sophisticated solutions to complex problems or issues. Does that really come in here as a reason, a possible reason for maybe the silence of the AU or the Rwanda deciding to take on the deal?
Yes, it can be. It can be, Felicity, of course, it can be. I mean, we don't have, as I said, we can just suppose things because we don't have clear documents that they can tell us why the AU is behaving in this way now, and it didn't behave in the same way last year when Denmark manifested the same intention than of the UK. So we can suppose, as I said, it would be very easy to say that Rwanda is doing that only because they want to implement the relation with Europe, and Kagame want to be backed by European governments. If in case you want to continue to be empowering Rwanda, it would be very easy, and everyone who knows a bit of African politics can tell you this after 30 seconds. But of course, I think that we should also try to see if there is something different happening. And I want to think that it's also real, the intention of the Rwandan government, given its past made of manslaughter during the genocide. I want to think that there is really also some empathy towards these people. Afterwards, it won't be easy to integrate in Rwanda. Of course, the European Court of Human Rights in June stopped the trip of several of these asylum seekers, saying that these Iraqi asylum seekers would not have been integrated in the Rwandan society.
I think I see your point. Yeah, I do see your point. Yeah. But let's see if we can go on a quick break. I'm sorry I keep interrupting you because we're almost out of time.
No, it's okay. No problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, the AU has condemned in the strongest possible terms the deal we're talking about. But beyond that, what kinds of solution-driven questions should Africa be asking? Dr. Drosy has already given us some ideas, but generally about illegal migration, what kind of questions should we be asking to grow Africa and reduce the need for people to move ashore? Join us again. So far, we've been asking questions, deep questions, beyond the relationship between Rwanda and UK with this new agreement. What are the broader implications for Africa? What are the questions we should be asking? I just asked Dr. Drosy about a seeming campaign to be viewed as forward-thinking. Is there any relevance in the context of this deal that the UK has? I think I have Dr. Drosy back with me. So I was asking you, go ahead, finish your thought about the kind of questions that will help us.
No, I was just saying, no, because you were asking me about the fact if the fact that a number of presidents in Africa, they stay in power for a very long time, if it can also be a problem in terms of, of migration management. And I was simply responding that, of course, if presidents in Africa, they find a way to remain in power for long, and you barely see elections in Africa that can be considered fair and transparent. Of course, this impacts also a lot on the migration management, or also on the asylum policy, because of course this will increase the number of dissidents, increase the number of protesters, and of course, often these presidents, they don't accept. Uh, I mean, frequent protests. So this, of course, it can increase the danger of civil wars, and of course, it can increase the danger of enhancing the number of asylum seekers. And so of course, this is another phenomenon that should be, I mean, that African countries should face. I mean, to have the fair elections with with the real democratic alternatives, it will certainly impact in a positive way also on the refugee management of African asylum seekers, for sure.
Let's talk about deterrence, really. Ideally, African leaders who cooperate with Europe or other countries to block migrants and asylum seekers could pay for doing so at the polls. But the likes of Kagame, for instance, has been in power for 22 years. Are there some other forms of deterrent that can be considered to discourage these kinds of deals?
Well, that I don't think so, because these are affairs. They are considered affairs of of domestic importance. As long as these kind of deals, they don't impact on the continent as a whole, you cannot prevent an African government to accept, under given circumstances, to be the destination of asylum seekers who first try to look for asylum in Europe. I mean, if of course there can be sometimes you can find a profile of illegality at that point, but for example, I mean, there have been issued several analyses in Europe on this deal, and some scholar object that that this deal is illegal under under a number of domestic and international instruments on the side of the UK. Apparently, not all the scholars, they agree on that, but as I said, on the side of Rwanda, no one can object that on the side of Rwanda, taking these refugees.
Okay, Dr. Rossi, I have to interject again. I'm told we have less than 3 minutes, and I still have plenty of questions for you. So I'll just ask, the UK agreement, it doesn't seem to be breaking any new grounds, but it is bringing up new legal issues, for the people.
On the side of Rwanda, legally there is nothing against. On the side of Rwanda, I'm saying, on the side of the UK, this can be discussed, but on the side of Rwanda, there is nothing that prevents Rwanda, apart from the previous analysis that I said, the fact that several human rights records. But I mean, apart from that, but legally speaking, there is nothing preventing Rwanda.
Okay, what outcome are you expecting from the cases in court now? The court is the only reason the UK hasn't done what they wanted to do. What possible outcome do you foresee?
I don't think possibly. I think that actually it's very difficult to foresee. But I think that it's very, there is this situation in Europe, in the UK, is exciting. I mean, is exciting a lot the public opinion and also domestic courts, domestic and European courts. So I think that in the end, nothing will happen in the sense that the UK will not send anyone to any asylum seekers to Rwanda. But this is my impression that, of course, I can be wrong. But I can see that there is a lot of protests, a lot of deterrent
Measures.
legal measures. So I think that in the end, I mean, no single asylum seekers will be outsourced to
Okay.
Rwanda from the UK.
What would be your advice to governments across Africa in light of this deal? So, because other countries are looking to take up where UK dropped off from, and there is also the possibility that others may succeed if the UK doesn't. So, what advice would you give to them to generally improve the conditions
yeah.
in Africa to discourage immigration?
Look, also here, I think that the response is quite simple. I also would like to urge African governments to do their best, but even more than their best, to prevent conflicts and to end the conflicts that are still ongoing. I know that this is difficult. I know that it's possible, quite impossible to do practically, but it's the only way in which you can you can eliminate the plight of refugees in Africa. As I
Dr.
said,
Cristiano.
we go back.
I'm afraid that's all time will permit us today.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for speaking to us.
I just want to conclude to say that we go back to this famous small sentence in the refugee.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I get you.
Yeah, sorry. No, because I didn't see you. No, I just wanted to go. I didn't know if I was still online or not.
Oh, okay. You are still on.
Yeah, I'm still on site. I just would like to say that we go back to this short sentence that I told you before that is present in all the legal instruments concerning refugees. It means to address the causes of the refugee plight. So
thank you very much, Doctor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your felicity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We need to address the root causes. Migration crisis is global, and one thing is for sure. Restrictions will not stop people from fleeing war or persecution. What can be done, as suggested, is for governments to strengthen international cooperation on refugee protection and, if nothing else, pay greater attention to addressing, like Dr. Durosi has said, the push factors behind immigration, not only from African, but other developing countries. My belief remains, just like Dr. Durosi, that Africa has all it takes, and the task before her is not impossible. That's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I do hope it's been worth your time. Join us again next week. Until then, please be well.